I'm Jason Marczak. I'm the director of the Latin America Economic Growth Initiative at the Atlantic Council's Adrian Arch Latin America Center. The election of Donald Trump on Tuesday presents a number of questions for the future of this next administration across the globe, but especially in Latin America. One of the surprising facts of this election is the number of Latino voters who supported Donald Trump. So clearly a misunderstanding from the broader media and pollsters about the reaction of the Latino community to some of the policy priorities put forth by Donald Trump during the campaign. We actually saw that about 29% of U.S. Latinos voted for Trump, which is actually a higher number, 2 percentage points higher than what Romney got 4 years ago. In 2008, about 31% of Latinos voted for John McCain at the time. So, the question is, why is that? Why is that, especially when a lot of the Trump candidacy, especially the early parts of the candidacy, was reflective of a deep anxiety toward immigrants and an anxiety toward Mexico, because of course about half of the Latino population in the United States are Mexicans. Of course, a much smaller percentage are undocumented. About 11 million are undocumented, of which about half are from Mexico. But I think that the broader question here is this deep anxiety and this fear among people, not just in America, but really around the world, as we saw in Europe over the summer with the Brexit vote, about how the world is changing, how globalization is changing the world, and the implications that has for the average worker. I think many of the other issues that we see across the hemisphere, including things like President Obama visiting Argentina in March, the numerous visits that we've seen from his cabinet secretaries and others, I think those are going to be a little bit less of a priority in a Trump administration, because the Trump administration is going to be, especially in the beginning, very focused on domestic issues and domestic wins, especially with regard to the economy, and trying to speak to the fears that he tapped into so well among the broader American worker. So I think that the broader kind of partnership issues with countries like Brazil or Argentina will fall to the wayside, at least at a presidential level. I think we can continue to expect a lot of interest from leaders in Congress who are very much champions of countries like that. But I think other countries and other issues will be dominating in the Trump administration. I think foremost among them is anything related to immigration and security questions, and trade, of course, as well. Here, the rhetoric during the campaign has been directed, a lot of that rhetoric, toward Mexico, a painting of Mexico as a country that sends its worst to the United States. Of course, that is far from the truth. But a lot of the campaign was built around this antipathy toward Mexico, and of course the building of a wall on the U.S.-Mexican border. I think that the border issues and border security, and potentially even questions about the wall, will be moved forward in a Trump administration, because this is a lot of what he based his campaign around. But I think he'll quickly realize that governing is very different from campaigning, and that unlike in a campaign where there might not be consequences for your actions and words, governing there are consequences. And so I think he will be forced to reckon with the fact that doing things like erecting a wall across the border that doesn't speak to larger migration questions, because most of the unauthorized who are in this country are not here because they're across the U.S.-Mexican border. It's because they overstayed visas. And so to really clamp down on the unauthorized population coming into this country, you need a broader policy, but it's not just a policy that kicks people out. It's also a policy that reforms our immigration system so that our labor supply better matches the demands that the workforce has. And so I think that we also need to take into account that a policy toward a Latin American policy that must also look at what our policy should be to the Northern Triangle. We've now have begun to invest $750 million in this current year toward a broader strategy with regard to Northern Triangle, which builds on the efforts of the Central American Regional Security Initiative, CARSI, that came into effect a number of years ago. And so I think that this broader approach to the Northern Triangle, one that's focused not just on the border, but it's focused on violence prevention, improving security, but also improving the economy in the region, it's something that will bear results if this is continued over a long term, similar to how Plan Colombia began in 2000 and invested heavily in Colombia over 15 years and brought Colombia to the point where it is now, which is on the cusp of peace. Mexico, of course, will be a huge area of focus. Trade issues, immigration issues, those immigration issues then stem further south toward the Northern Triangle. And at the same time, there are questions around Cuba, the extent to which President-elect Trump will pull back from some of the executive actions that President Obama has taken in regard to Cuba. There's, I think, a little bit of uncertainty and lack of clarity on that. He has said during the campaign that he largely supports the actions taken on Cuba, but that he would have struck a better deal. So it'll be interesting to see during actual policy implementation what that actually means.